The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that President Trump's financial records can be examined by New York prosecutors. In a 7-2 vote, the judges agreed that his office does not provide immunity from attempts from the Manhattan District Attorney to access his tax returns. But Congress's efforts to gain access to the president's tax returns has been rejected, making it highly unlikely any information will become public before the November election. While President Trump has not reacted kindly to the Supreme Court's decision, let's get the latest now from Alex in the queue.
Well, Tokes, a lot of commentators saying that the president's reaction perhaps masks the fact that this really is a bit of a mixed bag here. It's not necessarily all bad for the president. It's highly unlikely we'll see any of this information now before the election. But the president himself didn't seem to take it that way. Let's show you just some of the tweets. There was a real thread. First of all, we got a new phrase from him here, prosecutorial harassment or misconduct here. We know, of course, in the past he's accused people of having presidential harassment against him. He goes on to say that in the past, presidents have never been treated like this and that he is being targeted by a political prosecution. So what exactly has happened? Well, there's a number of things going on here. Broadly speaking, though, there were two big attempts to get access to Trump's financial records, which his tax returns have not been turned over. One was by the New York District Attorney, and the other was by House Committee. That's, of course, three House committees. That's in the Democrat-controlled House of Representatives. Now, when it came to access to Trump's financial tax returns, the president's lawyers had argued that these New York prosecutors couldn't access them because the president had absolute immunity. Well, that was chucked out. And in fact, the New York District Attorney saying this was a victory for the system. They will continue to pursue access to those records. But when it came to the House committees, that was where it really got stalled and pushed down to the lower courts once again. Highly unlikely there'll be a victory there. Nancy Pelosi, though, that's the House Speaker, she didn't seem to be taking it as a defeat, saying that they now had a pathway to access these documents. This is what she had to say.
Careful reading of the Supreme Court ruling related to the president's financial records is not good news for President Trump. The court has reaffirmed the Congress's authority to conduct oversight on behalf of the American people. The Congress will continue to conduct oversight for the people, upholding the separation of powers that is the genius of our Constitution. We will continue to press our case in the lower courts.
When it came to Trump's personal lawyer, taking a different tone from the president, you saw at the top there I was saying how angry the president got on Twitter. Well, his personal lawyer here saying it was, he's saying he's very pleased with these decisions, which, of course, either way, whether it's in the case of the New York case or the House committees, we're not going to be likely to see any of this information before the election. So Trump's personal lawyer saying this was a positive thing. Either way, it's a highly political situation, Tokes. And no doubt this verdict will be playing out in two very different ways, depending on who you asked tonight in Washington, D.C.
Alex, thanks for looking at that for us. Now let's go over to Washington, D.C., where we can speak to our reporter, Ray Suarez, for more on this story. Ray, good to see you there. Well, the Supreme Court ruling has said that these records don't have to be shared with Congress, but surely this is a big blow for President Trump.
Well, Tokes, the president didn't want anybody to see those records, not prosecutors, not congressional committees, nobody. And he's fought very hard for years, saying that, in effect, if the president doesn't want to show it to anybody, he doesn't have to. And it's hard to find a more categorical rejection of that line of reasoning than the one from the Chief Justice of the United States, John Roberts, who wrote the opinion today and said, no citizen, not even the president, is categorically above the common duty to produce evidence when called upon in a criminal proceeding. That's it. Cut and dried. And to add insult to injury, the two justices that the president has himself seated on the Supreme Court, Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, both voted against President Trump in this matter, saying yes, the New York prosecutors can see his tax records. They don't subpoena it directly from the president. It's not like they walk up to the White House and say, let us see your files. They are subpoenaing those records from his tax attorneys in New York, and they have to be produced as of today.
Ray, we heard from Nancy Pelosi, and you've mentioned some other figures there, but what's been the wider reaction in Washington, and what options are open now to Congress?
Well, Congress, because their reasoning about why they should be able to see these records was not rejected out of hand. They have another avenue, as Speaker Pelosi suggested, to see those records. The case has been kicked down to a lower court to be reheard. President's attorney, Jay Sekulow, says he's now preparing his case, in effect, to re-argue at a lower appellate court level. And now Congress, which at the time these cases were argued was slated, said that its argument had not been strong when it appeared before the justices, has a chance to get a second bite at the apple, sharpen up its reasoning, take some of the things contained in today's opinions and find new arguments to, in effect, use as a lever to reopen this case. As has been mentioned, it's unlikely all of these machinations can happen by the time Americans go to the polls in November, but it is key for once the president is a private citizen again, because some of these questions have to do with whether a sitting president can be challenged in this way. If there's dirt waiting in those records, it may not go very well for President Trump if he becomes a private citizen once again in January of 2021.
President Trump bucking the trend again, it seems. Ray Suarez now with the latest from Washington. Thank you.